All right.
We're
We're here
live?
for another quarterly, Matt.
All right, we're live again.
And
Excited to be here.
We've got our good friend Jon Lloyd with us.
Long-time listener. First time participant.
Well, let me kick it off. Thanks, everybody, for joining. This is Q2. I can't believe we're already in the second quarter. They say as you get older, time goes faster, and I guess that's true. Two things quickly to kick off. We're having a contest for $1,000 dinner with us. And
Doesn't have
you
to be
and
with
your
us. It
team,
could be
or
other
not
people.
us, but a CBTS dinner with your team and or customers. And all you have to do is go to the sign-up page, and that enters you. And if you ask a question, you get entered 5 more times.
5 more times,
So
6 total. Yeah.
That's one housekeeping item. The second is we are, for all the partners out there, we're getting close to channel partners the first week in May. And all 3 of us will be there along with several others from the CBTS team.
We've got like 13 or something,
This is
don't
my
we?
first time. This is my first channel partner.
Well, we've been prepping you for a long time. I think you're ready.
Excited is a word I'd use. Scared also, but yeah, first time.
Couple of big events. Monday night is our, now I'd almost say, world famous
Been
karaoke
pretty
idol,
popular. Yep.
where this is the 3rd installation where it's a battle of the TSDs doing karaoke. Awards get handed out, voting happens, and it's with a live band karaoke. So a lot of fun. We'll be at Running the Channel on Tuesday morning. And then
Why again are we doing that at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday?
because we run the channel.
So you say we will be there. I want to
Who's
clarify.
the
Maybe
we?
not.
Are we French?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So lastly is we're going to take a pretty relaxed approach this year at Channel Partners. We got a triple wide cabana, and our approach is just come see us at the triple wide. Yep, 3 cabanas. That means a pretty big minimum to hit that I think all of our partners will help us do. We've got massage therapists. No kidding. Massage therapists at the booth that'll be, helpful to relieve some stress. And then we also have a henna tattoo artist that will be fun to get tattoos of your favorite service providers like CBTS or your logo, wherever you want.
How long does a henna tattoo last? I don't know.
I think about 3 weeks.
So enough
Okay.
to go home and freak out your
yeah.
spouse that
Okay.
you made a mistake
That's right.
in Vegas. Yeah.
Well, listen, those are the housekeeping items. Gabby, did I forget anything? Am I good? Okay.
And Lance, say hi as well. Lance is our
Hey,
production
hi, guys.
man.
How you
Yeah,
doing?
he is the mastermind behind all this. So thank you, Lance.
Yep. So, Matt, why don't you kind of kick off this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely.
of
We got a
focus?
couple things we want to, introduce Jon here, and Jon's helps us introduce some of our next generation products around kind of backup as a service, patching, these kinds of things, and Jon's going to do a great job there. But I wanted to kind of show a slide again, and some of you have seen this, but to kind of make sure to remind everybody and kind of ground everybody here about what's CBTS kind of become known for in the channel. And we've become known in the channel basically for taking best-of-breed OEM solutions, solutions that in the past our customers would kind of have to buy themselves, maybe deploy or get professional services. And those technologies, while best-of-breed, our customers are wanting to get more business outcomes. They're wanting somebody to come in, help design, deploy, give day 2 support on those things. And you see quite a few names here on the side. And on the center here, we basically take these best-of-breed solutions and turn them into as-a-service offerings. Turn them into the kinds of channel-friendly offerings that we're all making the monthly commissions we're in this business for, right? So we've been very fortunate. We want to talk about some of those things today, some additional things you don't even see on the list that Jon's going to talk about. We all, by the way, as we do this, we become so successful. I mean, it's like on the Meraki side, you see Meraki there. We've got some 1,000 customers and 20,000 locations. I don't know how many devices totally we manage. It's a huge number. VeloCloud is we've got some 1,000 customers, 8,000 locations, 60 countries we do VeloCloud for. So we've become very successful at taking these best-of-breed solutions and turn them into as a service. And so we're getting service providers now. You see this, or excuse me, OEMs, you see this on the screen of Zscaler, Cato, et cetera, who are coming to us and say, hey, bring this product into your mix.
That's right.
And so we're in the middle right now with Cato with the POC. We're looking kind of pretty interesting about possibly bringing that in. Zscaler we're talking to. Silver Peak and HP, those things, Aruba have kind of come together. We're looking at these. So our job is always to be taking a look kind of down the road, or what are some of these best-of-breed technologies? How can we help turn those into an as-a-service offering.
Yep.
So, and today really is some of these things we want to talk about. These are some services here, and I'll go ahead and hand the clicker over to you, John. But John wants to talk about some of the additional things that we now have started to bring in the channel. Because a lot of times, we first came in the channel, we were known for Cisco as a service. Remember doing that back 5 years? That was a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? That was a revolutionary almost. And then we started expanding into these other offerings. But it typically was still around kind of communications, UCaaS, CCaaS, maybe delivering LAN infrastructure, SD-WAN. It wasn't into as much cloud services or security. And I think, John, you're going to introduce us to some of these things now that we're bringing in the channel.
Yeah, and I think, you hit on kind of why these OEMs are coming to us and saying, what if you guys built this service wrap, this service offering around as a service? Right now, the state of the economy and debt markets and these things, right? The idea for a business to be able to go, hey, I want a fixed, predictable operating expense, right? So my cost of capital now is 4x what it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's
for
true.
our customers that are on an as a service. They just are continuing to pay that same monthly. So not only are our partners looking for that kind of reoccurring revenue stream, our customers are looking for that fixed, predictable operating expense. One of the things, these ideas that we're going to present here today that we've been doing for some 20 years, but typically in kind of the enterprise data center space, big budgets, people kind of plan for, we're really starting to productize these things into an as-a-service model as well. And so when Matt talks about SD-WAN and network as a service, these things that why customers like that buying model, understand that that's also kind of predictable growth. If you're going to open a new location. If you've got a
store in a box.
That's right. I know what quantity of things I'm going to need. Backup and DR, and when we start to get into some of these solutions that are really based around growth of data, growth of applications, these are things that are wildly unpredictable. So it's not as simple as in a hardware world, I can say, I'm just not going to refresh this year because I had a certain amount budgeted and capital budgets are different. So I just am not going to refresh. This is, wow, I've outgrown my network attached storage, or I've outgrown whatever that looks like, right? And so we're really excited to bring to our partners and these trusted advisors that are out here talking to companies about how they can take that same ideology and kind of future-proof with backup and DR as a service.
Well, and this industry has always been there, but what we've seen is that security has really amplified the need, right?
Absolutely.
So as these companies go out and get insurance and security policies, this is part of that rigor.
So certainly this was hey, you should have it. I equate it to, life insurance. You should have it. Not everybody does, and different people look at it in different, right? But now businesses are being told, no, you don't have a choice. If you want an E&O policy, if you want to have the indemnification of an insurance policy, this has to be part of it, right?
But it's not just the buying model either, right? It's also they're wanting predictable outcomes, because even in the backup world, right, that Bob or Sally who ran that for you 6 months ago might have made a mistake. It wasn't the end of the world 5 years ago. Now those are pretty important subjects about the business outcomes have to be there on a regular basis, because the threats are continuing to ramp up and you better be ready for it.
Well, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about here is the business outcome and being able to what we call letter of attestation, proof, right?
Yep.
Everyone thinks that for those who have been in the game a while, tape backup. Right? Remember, you tape backup, you'd throw it in your car, you would drive over to the bank and put it in a safety deposit box.
Or just leave it in your car.
Or you'd leave it in your car in 90-degree heat in the summer. And then all of it. I think the industry standard restore point was 50% success rate restoring from tape, right? So one of the questions when I talk with customers is, why do I need a DR as a service and a backup as a service? Aren't you kind of doing the same thing as far as backing up my data? And at a very high level, we can obviously go into weeds, but what we're doing with backup is simply making sure both on-site, which we'll talk about, that's a differentiator of how we deliver it, a media appliance on-site, we're backing things up to. Then we are targeting something off-site. Again, we'll talk about where we target and how that's unique to us. And that is simply if data is to be corrupted, if data is to, God forbid, be ransomware, if all of a sudden the data is not usable or accidentally is deleted, however it happens, I want to restore back to it. When we start talking about disaster recovery, that backup is part of it, but also, what if I can't restore that data to the server it was on because the server has had an issue? My building is without power, right? And so that's the next extension. So while there's a lot of similarities as far as making sure my data is replicated, making sure my data is protected, making sure my data is accessible to another site, we take DR to another level and say, right, but what if you physically don't have your environment anymore? How do I continue to keep up and running? So think about that as data, backup as a service. I've lost my data, but I physically have the environment to put it back to. DR, I've lost the environment as well.
Yeah, guys, I had a question came in on that note. Will the Cato Zscaler integrations be available later this year?
We're certainly hoping so. We're in the middle of a proof of concept with both of them today. Of course, when you take these services and bring it in, part of our managed services is we're kind of delivering that as cookie cutter, right? Kind of like a SKU that you would go into a grocery store and a can of beans and reliably deliver that. So just bringing a product on for us isn't just about testing. We've got to go through, build the kind of project management plans, the day 2 support plans, kind of the packages. So kind of a long answer for I certainly hope we're going to get there, a relatively early time frame, because I'm excited about it, but we're still taking a look at what's going to take to do that.
Yep. And I would say from my lens and my seat in kind of what we call strategic accounts, if things are big enough, there's never an answer of no, right? So when Matt talks about kind of creating this repeatable automation and people process, we also then have kind of these programs for very large accounts where we will build it, rather than build it and they will come. If they're already here, we'll figure out how
the right snowflake size.
Yeah,
we'll build
snowflake,
it.
right?
Yep.
But there's certainly a minimum height to ride when we get there, because we literally are staffing. For that.
Exactly. Well, great question. Thank you. Let's kind of get back to this idea, because I like that differentiation between, having the ability to get the data back, but then what if you don't have the recovery to actually make it happen?
And so if you think about backup, right? Backup can also be driven by industry standards of things, for SOX compliance or PCI compliance. There's legally mandated retention periods. So I want to be able to back up data, depending on what it is. Maybe it's 3 years, 7 years, and maybe it's indefinite, right? Mm-hmm. I always need to have that data. That doesn't mean I need to restore that data in the blink of an eye, right? If we need to go and pull data for a legal action for something that happened 6 years ago, I've got some discovery period. I don't need to get it back within an hour, right? And so typically with backup, you're storing a lot more stuff. You're restoring it far more slowly, but the cost, call it per gig or per terabyte, is significantly lower. At DR, I need it back. I'm my business, I need to return to operations. I need to return to production. And there we're talking about some, return to production in 4 hours, return to operations in 15 minutes, right? And so this is the idea of, I've got to keep my business up and running. And so I need, maybe it's the last 30 days worth of data, not the last 7 years, but I need to get it, and I need to get it immediately. And so that's where we talk to customers about really needing both. Backup is going to offer you a long-term safety net at a much lower cost per data, but disaster recovery is going to offer you that safety net that you're not going to lose revenue in the event of something happening.
Yep.
Right.
Makes sense.
So how do we do it at CBTS? Because there's a lot of players in this space, right? We can't be everything to everybody. We know there's a lot of great tools out there. What we try to do with these service offerings is, Matt talked about going into a grocery store and buying something off the shelf with some of these kind of traditional route switch or voice products. In that world, things are pretty much, there's industry best practices. There's, architecture to follow. In this world, we're building our side. Right? We're picking the logo. We're picking industry best of breed. We're building our people, processes, operations around it. And then we're really customizing on your side. And so when we go into a customer and we start looking at data retention for backup, not all data is created equally. Maybe some does need to be 1 year. Some needs to be 7. We don't want to pay to hold everything forever. And in fact, you actually have a legal risk sometimes. You don't want to store, if you don't have to store it for 7 years, you don't want to store it for 7 years, right?
So that's part of our service, is rationalizing what applications and what data we want to store for what period.
Right. Okay. Helping you build what makes sense. So what we do is we put a local backup appliance, one that allows me for a faster restore for something that maybe I accidentally quickly deleted. So we're going to put an appliance on site that's going to basically store 31 days worth of data. We're going to back it up locally for a month. We will size that based off of the environment, right? What are you bringing? That's hardware that CBTS provides. It's all included in the monthly MRC. We manage that. We configure it. We ongoing, handle maintenance and patching and things like that of it. And then from there, we will target after that 31 days, where do you want to send that data to?
Does it have to be a CBTS data center? I see that.
No, and that's what's really cool. So if you already are in Azure or AWS, and a lot of these cloud providers will have really cheap storage, especially for long-term, like a Glacier inside of AWS, or for customers who say, I'm not in that cloud environment, I want something more dedicated. We do operate across North America our own data centers, and we can use our own compute resources, right? So we run our own private and public cloud, and we run infrastructure as a service pods, and we can utilize that compute. So one of these great concepts, if you think about, why would I do that? Well, maybe you want to come to CBTS because you want to drop a private link in, right? We already have a wide area network, and you want to bring our data center into that wide area network as part of that backup. We can certainly accommodate that. Good luck dropping an MPLS into a public cloud, short of ExpressRoute or Megaport or some highly costly thing. The second piece, when I start talking about, so we utilize Commvault, and if you're familiar with their offering, we also have support for Metallic. So some of these things, they can do a lot of what I would say is highly important, but highly difficult or sometimes niche things. So we do a lot of Epic backup. Commvault, that's really kind of a specialty. Salesforce.com backup, right? Things like that aren't necessarily on your prem, in your environment. Commvault and their Metallic offering can really help make sure you're as things move to the cloud or as you buy very purpose-built applications, we can still back them up. I've talked about, though, we opened on 50% of my tape backups were gone, right, when I went to restore. And that's where we plug in Bocata. And Bocata is a data protection, really insights tool that we run over the top of it. And so we are showing, hey, here's what is currently backed up with on-premise. Here's what's living in the cloud. Here's the machines that are being backed up. Maybe you add a virtual machine, you spin up a new server. Well, if we don't know about it, doesn't mean we're backing it up, right? So we have the ability, I always say this phrase to customers, inspect what you expect. There's nothing worse than spending money on something and then the worst happens and then you go to restore and you don't have it. Also, that's not an option anymore for these E&O policies for insurance companies to say, oh, okay, you bought an OEM, great. They want proof, right? They want to make sure, what are you backing up? How long are you backing it up, right? Are you audit compliant? All of these things. Do you have an SLA? How fast would it take you to restore it, right? If I'm paying you for lost revenue or lost data, what is my exposure there? And so layering in Bocata over the top of our Commvault offering, all as a service for customers, really allows them to understand what is happening in their environment and be able to prove that they really are safe and they are able to restore.
So as you do that, you brought up SaaS earlier. It seems to be, isn't it a common misconception that many of my most successful, like you mentioned, Salesforce or Office 365, that there's backups being done for those? And there isn't necessarily backups being done for them. And so that's the other thing I think has been interesting for me is that as we go out there and talk to customers, like when I ran an Exchange server on premise, I backed that up. And if something happened, God forbid, I could go back to a version of it. I lose something in Exchange today or somebody makes a mistake, I'll never see it again.
Yeah, there's a misconception in SaaS of like, I don't have to worry about anything anymore because I went to SaaS. SaaS is simply, the application being, call it 80 to 90% pre-built. And this is where, if you've heard the expression low code or no code, right? So you buy ServiceNow, you buy Salesforce, you then still have some developer that's making it do what you saw in the demo, right? We all saw the fancy demo and then we bought it and we're like, oh, it doesn't just do that out of the box, right? So one, you still have development work to be done. But two, they're hosting it in highly redundant clouds. And so you're basically saying, look, we're putting our faith in you that you are going to keep that application accessible on the internet. And if you lose a data center or use an internet link, you're failing it over somewhere else, so I'm still going to be able to get it. They're not doing anything. You don't want them to do anything with your data, right? How would you feel if you found out that all of a sudden Salesforce was mining your data that you had built out in your CRM for whatever reason, right? Analytics or selling it off. And so they don't want the data inside your tenant. They're just providing the application and the tenant. And so there's a lot of misconceptions that when I go to SaaS, all of my other business concerns end. And this is not the case.
Yeah.
So John, how does a customer engage with us? What is it on a project basis? Is it a big forklift? Kind of talk about what the standard implementation is like with a customer, or how do they digest it?
Yeah. So the good news is, and we'll talk about DR here, and it's kind of the same thing, right? You engage with a channel manager. We're going to scope the deal. A lot of times we get into these scenarios, and the number one question I get from customers is, can I bring my own license? Maybe, right? If you already are a Commvault customer, we can talk about it. We actually get service provider licensing, and so it's a license maybe per gig instead of per server, and there's some advantages there. Service provider licensing tends to be at a lower discount. So that's one of the questions I get quite a bit, and the answer is maybe. We'll look into it and see if it makes sense for the customer. But what we're doing is coming in and really starting with, call it an assessment, understanding what do you have today? What is your storage environment? Are you running Pure? Are you running Nimble? Right? I mean, you have some network storage that is there in the environment, and that's what we're going to be backing up. So how do we integrate to it? We put our appliance on site. And so my point is, it's not a giant lift and shift because we're starting with coming into your environment, understanding your environment, putting this appliance in your environment, getting that all set up and working. And if we do hit road bumps, roadblocks or bumps in the road, or we need to come back, we need to get the security team because there's east-west firewall. It's not during some migration trying to get to the cloud, right? It's, call it, moving at our own pace and at the customer's pace, getting that data center environment set up, that on-site environment, making sure everything's up and working properly, and then it's hitting the button.
Bottom line is, partners get a hold of us. We'll bring you in and talk and see if the opportunity. There's certain minimum heights to ride. We're not going to talk about, backing up. Tell me about kind of a minimum height to ride of what's.
So it certainly depends, because a lot of these things we're going to talk about today tend to be kind of paired together. Most of our customers aren't buying backup as a service and not DR.
It's usually larger environment, 1,000 employees and above, typically.
Yeah, a lot of times call it 100 servers is might be a good metric to use. A lot of it kind of depends. We've got a customer that's got 30 servers, but each of those servers is a petabyte of data. That's a really big customer. And so we typically, if it's a standalone, 100 servers. But if you come just and say, hey, we want to kind of build this whole new suite of services CBTS is bringing into the channel, customers interested in backup and DR as a service, we're going to talk about our patching. And so maybe now we're kind of getting to that minimum height to ride with a smaller customer because they're building a full data center vision with us.
And for our partners, what are those compelling events that are driving the customer to actually go, hold on, I need something? Like, what are those business drivers?
So in the backup world, it could be something as innocuous as, oh, hey, somebody accidentally deleted something, and then we went to back it up and we couldn't. Maybe because we don't have something in place. Maybe it's because we thought it was working and it didn't. Maybe it's we had a more SMB, like a Barracuda type solution that we've really outgrown. It wasn't designed. Our data's growing, our company is growing, and we've just physically outgrown the hardware. Do I make a capital investment? Maybe it's, hey, we started to stand up a cloud journey in a cloud environment, and so now I have these elastic resources for storage that maybe I didn't have before, so I want to look at something different. Maybe it's premiums are renewing on your insurance policy. I can tell you we went through it here, right? We're like any other company. We go to renew our insurance, and they go, here's your new premiums, and here's the things you need to do to stay compliant, and those change, right? So there can be a lot of different reasons. Some of them could be bad reasons. Some of them could just be innocuous, call it line of business reasons.
Okay, cool. Well, go on. Let's talk about DR a little bit.
Yeah, so DR, I mentioned kind of that other. This is really an environment that can run. We partner with Zerto here, and Zerto is the big winner in this space, in the enterprise space. Again, there's competitors in it. Why Zerto for us at CBTS? It is the closest to real-time replication that you are going to get. And so our thought is we're offering this SLA of a 15-minute, return to operations, return to production in 4 hours. So if we're offering 15 minutes, I can't have a data backup, a DR that's, backing up hourly. Mm-hmm. That's an issue for me. So the only thing limiting you with Zerto is what is your bandwidth. So if you've got a 10 meg internet pipe, maybe we're not quite real time. If you've got a gig private line into our data center, it's real time, right? 2 millisecond latency or whatever across an Ethernet. So all that's part of the design that we do with you. Again, we're going to put a device on-prem that our enterprise network operations center is monitoring. It's a CBTS owned appliance. And here's what's really cool about this. One, not all applications are created equally. So we can customize this. Maybe you have tier 1 apps that it is a 15-minute, 4-hour SLA. Then maybe you've got tier 2 apps that you want to spend a little bit less money on, but it's maybe a 4-hour, 8-hour RTO, RPO. Then maybe you've got tier 3 apps that's a 24-hour. And then maybe you got tier 4 that we're not going to back those up. Yep. Right? That's just we're
not going to DR back those up because we could come back to them 2 weeks later and run our business.
Yeah. Yep. And so it's not an all or nothing, right? We size it to the application. But then again, back to these targets. Where do you want to target? One of the concepts when you target AWS in this cheap Glacier S3 bucket, right? Typically with DR, you would target S3. It's faster to restore, whereas backup might be Glacier. but that's not a server, right? It's just a target environment. And so for customers who say, I want to target AWS, I'm going to put this in an S3 bucket, that's a much lower cost than maybe dedicated resources in a CBTS environment. But when you go to restore, we've got a problem because you've got to move that over to an EC2 instance, a server, right, farm.
Huh. I did not know that.
Then you can restore from it. And so maybe your tier 1 apps, you're targeting a CBTS environment because those are dedicated resources. There is no moving them or converting them. We're just backing them up. So maybe tier 1 ends up in CBTS on our compute pods. Maybe tier 2 apps with the lower RTO, RPO, you're utilizing the cost savings of this elastic environment of AWS and S3. And so this concept is really looking at what is, the business constraints, right? In a perfect world, any business would cut a blank check to never have downtime, never have it. At some point, there needs to be, I got to make money too. And if I, as a business, if I take all my EBITDA and put it into security and DR and all the stuff CBTS can help me with, well, if we don't make money, we've got a bigger problem. And I think that's really the benefit with CBTS, as opposed to just saying, I'm going to go buy Commvault, I'm going to go buy Zerto, is really building out what makes sense for your business. And financially is one of those constraints. Connectivity is one of those constraints.
Good. I'm saying, how often, I come from the old world and I think about DR and disaster recovery as I also had to have a physical location. As you've been involved with some of these more complex DR, engagements, how much other of it does come to remote workers and the tools that need to be at the desktops? Or how is this, are these conversations oftentimes bigger than just the DR problem? Is it making sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, so it's not just about data, but it's about access to the environment. I would say some of that gets a little bit, diminished because of SaaS and the number of things like Microsoft and things like that I can continue to access. Yep. But again, it depends on what your time to restore is. With AWS or Azure, it's very elastic that you could move something over there. With CBTS, those are dedicated, always on resources, so it's going to be a little bit more expensive monthly, but you do have the ability to basically run your environment in. And this is just an advantage because we run our own infrastructure as a service pods, right? As we compete with AWS and Azure. We're huge AWS and Azure partners. We help customers move their workloads there. We help them modify their applications and modernize them to get there. We manage tenants inside of there. And then we also compete with them with our own, private and public offerings as well.
Yeah. We want to get to some other things here because we're about half an hour here, so keep going.
Yep. So when we talk about, same with backup and the Bocata Insights, inspecting what you expect, we included in our service once a year at no charge. We do a DR test, a full DR test of your environment with a letter of attestation, so you can turn that into your insurance company. Again, making sure you're spending money every month. We want to make sure that it's actually there and actually working. So we will do a DR failover scenario every year with our customers and make sure that DR plan's in place, building the test setup, building the run book, looking at lessons learned. So the first thing when we install is a DR test, right? That's the first one for the first year. Build our run books, and then we continue to evolve that over the partnership with our customers.
Cool. Patching has been a huge thing, right? That's, as I've gone through, because we're doing more and more when we kind of do our PowerPoint, we call our 5 pillars presentation, kind of explaining to partners and customers what we do. This whole move into security, more and more managed security services, and now this problem of patching. It used to be that patching wasn't so important necessarily or mission critical to an organization. And this whole security and cybersecurity landscape has changed a lot about the need on patching. So, and you're the one who really kind of woke me up to some of this because I've been telling this in presentations and people are like, oh no, I want to talk about that. No, I want to talk about patching. So tell us a little bit about our journey, even CBTS, of how we got here and what we've gotten good at here on this patching side.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Matt. I have yet to talk to a customer who's like, no, not interested. Right? I mean, this is a thing, especially in the security space. I call it janitorial work. It's something that is mission critical, and if it doesn't get done, you certainly notice it in your environment, but nobody wants to do it. And here's the
and maybe even 5 years ago, there wasn't the same kind of pressure on it. It was done as kind of janitorial work, and if it wasn't completely cleaned up, nobody was necessarily screaming about it. But now today, with the cybersecurity landscape, patching not done properly is a huge risk.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know how deep we're going to go into. I don't think we're going too deep into security today, but you think about, there's a new concept, not new concept, but what we talk about in security of attack surface management. Right? Mm-hmm. The idea of, in the years past, even 5 years ago, it was like protect the edge, protect the firewall, and you're good, right?
Right.
Now that attack surface, every employee is a firewall,
Yep.
So
that's a good point.
What is that attack surface? And it can be the application, it can be the operating system. In some cases, it can actually be the hardware, right, itself. And so what we do around patching, we call it Patch Tuesday, right, as an industry, and the third Tuesday of every month, all of the providers come out and say, here's our patches, right? And then there's some automated tools people can run into an SCCM, things like that say, cool, it patches out, and they just push it. Okay. Well, one, you don't want to just push it. You want to evaluate, read the release notes, things like that. Then you got to push it to everybody in your environment. How are you relaying it out into the environment? Do they have to VPN into the network because you pull these patches down into some server that they collect off of? Well, my employees. When's the last time you VPN'd in, Matt?
I have no idea. Yes.
Make a note of that for our security team.
No, I really don't know.
But that's a very real thing, right? I mean, we want you to VPN in once a week at least, right? To phone home and collect any patches, things like that. But what if you don't? And that's the world we're living in. People don't anymore. And so how do we get an internet-facing relay? All of these challenges. But what it comes down to is really two things of why we see patching tend to I wouldn't say fail. I'd say be not mature enough inside of an organization. The first is when I mentioned janitorial work. Go to your high-level senior engineer on staff and tell them, we want you to spend 2 weeks a month chasing down 5,000 employees and making sure their Lenovo laptops are patched. And we want to make sure that all of our servers...
They're not going to work for you very long.
Right. That's not what they're there for. That's not what they want to do. And by the way, what a terrible waste of whatever you're paying a senior-level engineer. So what happens is we go and we hire junior engineers, right? People coming out of MIS school, people just getting into the industry, and we say, hey, we want you to focus on patching. Well, now what do I do the other 2 weeks of the month? So what they're doing is honing their skills. They're learning your environment. They're getting, they're mentoring with the senior engineer. And after a year, they're coming to you and saying, I want to go do more inside of our organization. I want more money to do it because I've maybe got these certifications. And if you don't, they're going to go somewhere else where they will get a chance to go and experience more. And so now you're hitting restart again after 12 months on this patching program. And that's what it is. It is a program. The second piece is when I go and say, hey, we're going to patch these 30 servers on Saturday at midnight. Well, I've got to there's application owners on those servers. I've got to go, hey, producer Lance, I'm patching your server Saturday at midnight. Well,
okay, just let me know because I got stuff going on Saturday at midnight. I'm very busy.
And of course, I'm going to go, sure, Lance, we'll move you.
We'll wait.
We'll wait, right? And so what happens is due to that kind of personal relationship, I got to ask them to give me a Saturday night at midnight, 2 a.m. Hey, it doesn't work. It's my kid's birthday. I'm on vacation. I'm out of town. And this permeates on and on and on. So the average customer, when we talk to about patching, they have a successful patch rate of 54%. We have an SLA in our patching agreement that's 95% success. And not only is it 95% success, we also give reporting to our customers. So I have a customer we do this for, it's 20,000 endpoints. And we patched, and there was like 80 that failed to take their patch. And by the way, we do this with an internet-facing relay. So as long as it gets to the internet, it doesn't need to VPN
Thank God I have to be on VPN.
Right? Matt doesn't have to VPN in, and he can still get the patching. Well, 80 failed, and we were able to go and say, well, 80 failed. These 20 aren't on physically. Like they just didn't power them up. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. These ones are too low on memory to take the patch. Oh, well, we got to refresh these old laptops that have been in the network for a very long time, right? That sort of reporting and visibility. The second thing is we then work with the customer's cab, right, their change board, and we say these servers, primary window is Saturday at midnight. Secondary window, if we need to excuse it for some reason, is the following, 2 weeks later, Saturday at midnight. So now when we go, producer Lance, can you do it this Saturday? And he goes, I can't. Great, then I'll see you in 2 Saturdays.
I prefer Sundays. Sundays at 4 a.m., please.
Yep. Well, I already got you on the cab for the second Saturday, right? And so now he's locked in. We don't have that personal relationship.
Yeah, I've seen from the customers that have consumed this product, one of the things that they've liked is, one of the things holding them back at this point is the politics within their own organization. Sure. And by having someone like CBTS come in, it allows everybody to be accountable and has really been the impetus of why they wanted to go, hey, I need someone else to help me versus do it myself, and then I've got this politics. We can cut through that.
Yeah, I tell this story. We have a very large hospital system. They have a huge IT staff. I mean, they're about 22,000 employees, probably a 600-person IT staff. They are very, very good. Their CISO is very, very strong. They had all the tools. They used Qualys. They used SCCM. They had all the tools. We are doing their patching as a service, and the first time we patched, the CISO, who is a very hard man to please, sent me an email and said, well, you guys patched last night. You removed 700,000 vulnerabilities from my environment. And so one of the things when I start talking to customers, the first thing I hear, oh, we use and fill in tool here. This is not a tool. Patching as a service is a program. It's bringing the people, bringing the process. Yep. Now, yes, we do standardize on some industry best practice tools. Why is that important? Well, a tool that's internet facing is very, very
Big
important.
Fix is that,
right?
yeah.
So we utilize Big Fix. From our vulnerability scanning, we utilize Tenable, and we kind of talk through that a little bit. But what's great about it is even included in our standard license, right? It's not enough to just say we're going to patch, Windows operating system on your laptop, Matt. Well, okay, I've patched that, but also what about your internet browser, right? Do you use Chrome?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so we're going to patch Chrome. What do you use?
Chrome.
I was hoping you'd say Firefox.
I'm at Firefox.
You missed the cue on that one, Channel Chief. But no, so inside your organization, and by the way, I think we as a company do have a standard. We're supposed to use Microsoft Edge, maybe. But
I did not know that.
Yeah, right.
I don't VPN, so I don't know.
I use Netscape.
Yeah. Netscape. I use Chrome as well. But a point being,
Alta Vista.
You get this sprawl through your environment, right? So we're making sure we're patching that. We're patching most Microsoft, the O365 apps. These things are included in a standard license. So again, when I talk about every employee as a firewall, patching these apps. But then we have an additional license. And this is a little bit of word vomit here on the screen, but we can add on a license and say, hey, we are going to take you out of the concern of patching this application. So now we're patching the hardware, we're patching the operating system, and we're actually patching these applications that are running on it. That's a very cool thing that help CISOs kind of get everything all in one place, get it all reported on, right? And
it's surprisingly affordable too. That's what, like a couple dollars a desktop, something a month.
Yeah, so a couple dollars a desktop. I mean, again, the quantity is going to matter, but you can call it some $2-3 a desktop, maybe $10 a server, right? Yeah. So servers take a little bit more work. We have, and by the way, while we use tools, there are real people behind it. So when we do a patch window, there's a team of patch engineers
following up. Yep.
Yeah, so Chris DeBrunner runs that. Chris will be at Channel Partners with us this year, and so we can take deep dives for any of the partners that are out there. But this is a real team of people utilizing those tools. So when your customers say, "I'm good, I have Intune," push on that, challenge that, because I get that may be included with their E5, but it doesn't really solve it. The next is, as part of this, it's a separate offering, but most of our customers, kind of like DR and backup, consume them together, is our vulnerability management. Mm-hmm. And so I equate it to, when you look at, what was the movie, Men in Black with Will Smith and Tommy Lee back in the 90s, right? And he goes, oh, there's a Death Star above it. And Tommy Lee Jones says, calm down, man. There's always a Death Star above us, right? We'll be fine. When you go and do a vulnerability scan, you're going to see, I've got 1 million vulnerabilities, right? It's not all CVEs are the same. Also, if you solve that one vulnerability, it might clear 2,000 vulnerabilities that were behind it. Or maybe, that's a vulnerability, but you got 40 layers in front of it that they couldn't get to, right? And so vulnerability is really about, building this programmatic approach of coming in. We utilize Tenable for this or other tools. I had a customer say, I use Qualys. I've got licensing on Qualys. Could I use your people, though? Can we work that into the SOW? So we'll run the scan automatically, but then we want you to come in and really kind of build this program. And so we come in the first week and we'll scan it. What can we see? What is the vulnerability reporting coming back to us and saying? And that's with our Tenable. Then some customers will even start at this next step where they go, well, I'm going to give you the results of that scan because I use my own tool. But can your engineers really review this and really break this down and help me understand where should I spend my effort and energy? What of this 1 million things?
Right.
What are the 5?
Right. That 80-20 rule that I can knock out.
That's right. And so we kind of help present that plan. of what we're going to do. We're going to patch over here. Maybe there's actual remediation that needs to be done. Maybe there's concerns of ports or things like that being open. Then we're going to execute on it, and then we're going to rescan. Again, everything, you're going to hear a common theme here, which is inspect what you expect. We are going to come in and make commitments to you with enterprise class SLAs. We're giving you these SLAs that say, hey, with DR, you're back up in 15 minutes. Hey, with patching, 95% is going to be successful. We're giving you insane enterprise level SLAs. And we're going to prove it to you with each of these solutions. And so I think reporting is a huge piece that when a customer just goes and buys a logo, a OEM, they don't get. There really is a service behind this. This isn't just an operational model.
It's delivering a business outcome.
And it is the people, the process, and then the best of breed tools that go with it. Yep.
Well, thank you, Jon. There's another slide here I wanted you to go to, because one of the things, we've been working on, we talk internally about how we've been working on to expose the whole of CBTS into the channel, more and more of these services, right? So we talked about backup, we talked about DR, patching. Last time we talked about security. A lot of the managed security products we're bringing down into more of the mid-market space. One of the things that I think the partnership or the partner channel out here doesn't understand as well is we've got some pretty interesting capabilities on helping people take workloads, modernize those workloads, move them out of maybe current data centers, some public clouds, some private colo space, things like that. And we had a customer called Juice Plus that you were instrumental in the channel here helping us win, along with a whole team of other folks from CBTS. There was a lot of them. But this ended up being like a $130,000 a month opportunity where we helped this company take some, I think, 200 workloads or so and start to rationalize and move these. Talk a little bit about what you did here, because this was a really big win for us in the channel, for us personally at CBTS, and it's something that I wanted to get exposed here to our partners. So
this is, I don't want to say the first win, but certainly, we've been doing this for a long time as a company, and we really started kind of safely packaging to bring out to the channel. We thought we could be successful here.
Yep.
And man, did it help that, call it
that we won.
The first real big one. And it became a great case study and poster child. So one of the challenges when organizations say, I want to go to the cloud, I want to get out of my data center. Well, I've got a lot of legacy debt. Maybe I have applications still running on mainframe. Maybe I got these x86 applications. I've got purpose-built applications. Maybe I've got databases. Right. Mm-hmm. So the application, maybe I can go to something more modern or SaaS it, but I got to get data and the dependencies on other apps and APIs and all of this stuff. It is not as simple as saying, just go put it in the cloud. Now, you will get OEMs like VMware who will say, no, it can be. Sure, we'll run bare metal in the cloud. We'll put VMC from AWS, right? We'll put AVS on Azure. And that's Microsoft. That's VMware running bare metal in public clouds. And that allows you to just move your workloads. Well, now you're paying for the licensing to the cloud and the licensing to the OEM. We've seen a lot of customers come to us about our offering. We've been running this since about 2008. We have data centers in Toronto, in Cincinnati area, and in Dallas. That footprint continues to grow. We have some purpose-built data centers for some like IBM backup stuff we do in Chicago. And so we want the cloud. We don't want to have to start developing natively to the cloud. And that's essentially one of the things we used to always say, cloud first strategy. And now people are saying cloud smart strategy. Mm-hmm. I want to be in multiple clouds, right? People say, I want multi-cloud strategy. Okay. Well, the way to go to the cloud and not have cost balloon is to develop your applications natively. You really want to have a team that develops natively to AWS and natively to Azure, and you're still, your data center footprint. And so when Juice Plus came to us, they said, we want to pick a cloud at some point, right? And to say came to us, they didn't come to us. They came to a trusted advisor, one of our partners, that came to us and said, hey, we think you guys could be successful at this. In some 3 to 5 years, we'd love to pick a cloud, maybe a cloud for certain applications, some here, some there. But today, I got to get out of my data center. I've got my own physical data center. It's in disrepair. Hardware's end of life. I want to get out of there, and I'm built on VMware. So we utilized our infrastructure as a service, which is also built on VMware, and we said, we can vMotion all these workloads. We'll hit a button, and you'll be out tomorrow. It's the simplest thing ever. And they said, yeah, well, also, though, what about a private? Because we've got all this PCI compliance, and we take e-commerce data. We've got integrations to Chase for processing, for JP Morgan. So we need all of this to be hybrid. And we said, okay, yeah, we can do that. That's one of our benefits at CBTS, a private, dedicated hardware, everything. Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but lead times on hardware right now isn't great. And so we had the compute to be able to do it, but it was going to be some 9 months to get all of the hardware for the route switch and all of that. And so we actually built them hybrid and said, what if we brought you in and logically segmented you? So we're going to come in through our public cloud, utilizing those shared resources, but we'll create virtual domains and we'll create VLANs, and we will firewall you off to then route to the private cloud where your actual compute is while we wait on this hardware to come in. Problem solved there. So now we're back on Easy Street and we're moving again. And they said, right, but ultimately, though, we would love to, after we move everything over, move to the cloud at some point in 3 to 5 years. But we also want you guys to continue to manage it. So how do we take advantage of it? And we said, not a problem. We wrote an agreement and said, hey, here's the spend commitment to CBTS. We can manage your workloads in AWS. We can manage your workloads in Azure. We can manage them in our data center. None of that matters. We'll allow you to move them.
Yeah, that's a journey approach versus a, hey, this is what we want to box you into.
That's right.
And that's really what we're about in this space.
And then they said, great, what a great partnership. Oh, by the way, though, how do we make the apps in 3 to 5 years be able to move to the cloud, right? And so we are building out our DevOps team. We're building out a CI/CD pipeline, continuous iteration, continuous deployment, to be able to run these applications through and modernize them. So not only are we saying, yeah, we'll let you go to these public clouds in 3 to 5 years, we're saying we're going to help you get there.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to make these applications be able to live anywhere. And the coolest part when we do, managed services in this regard, our infrastructure as a service, we're managing the environment, we're managing the servers, we're managing the operating systems. In their case, we're helping manage and develop on the apps. All these things that we're kind of talking about today, backup and patching and DR, that comes natively to it. I have responsibility for it. Yep. So we kind of started with, here's some piecemeal SKUs that our customers are consuming. They're in their data centers, and we're helping them back it up, and we're helping them build DR, and we're helping patch their environment. Juice Plus is an example where we said, we're going to be an easy button. We're going to forklift you over. Then we're going to build your 3 to 5 year journey. But by the way, when you come into our environment like that, we can't have something in our environment that's unpatched. We can't have something in our environment that we're responsible for managing that isn't backed up. And so that's all built into our solution. So we kind of started with individual SKUs, but ultimately, as we end here with Juice Plus, that is an example of selling everything on the truck. And the customer is going,
it was a huge success. It was $130,000 a month MRC for 3 years.
5 years.
5 years. And we won it against Flexential, which is one of the big names in the channel. So that was a really big win for us, showing the capabilities. So.
Yeah, and so I mean that was proof of the concept that we can go and be successful in the channel. You guys have great partners that understand the customer business and understands our technologies and our offerings. So that's why I'm going out to channel partners. Excited to.
Matt, you brought it up earlier. We were known early on as Cisco as a service, and we've intentionally started with focus. And really are now opening up what CBTS, the full capabilities of what CBTS can do.
But in a careful way.
In a careful way. We know we have to earn the right of our partners, their trust.
Yep.
And that's what these quarterly sessions are all about, is educating our partners more and more on what we do. Obviously, this is one way we do that to get that messaging across. We're more than happy to bring Jon, we'll meet him at Channel Partners, we travel.
Jon, Chris DeBruner from the security side is going to be there in Channel Partners. So any of you folks who are coming to Vegas and like to sit down with Jon, like to sit down to Chris to understand some more of these expanded capabilities, we'd love to do it.
And we'll also come to you. We do that all the time. Yep. So we're here to educate your organization, because really that's where these engagements start. As Jon said, is based on the relationship.
Well, we pulled Jon in. We pulled Jon in some of our bigger agents, some of our larger agents with 10 or 20 employees who'd like to get the story from Jon and the story from Chris DeBruner. So I think that's an offer too. Like I think you mentioned it, but I want to make sure they understand we're happy to run these training sessions with our staff as well.
Yep, absolutely.
I think we're at the end here. We're about 50 minutes in. That's probably enough of us.
Yeah, enough of us.
Unless people had questions.
Do we have any questions here?
Yeah, I don't have any other questions right now. No.
Okay,
great.
All right, fantastic. Jon, you do a great job as always. Thank you. As you guys can tell in the partner channel here, if you get an opportunity, we get a chance to put Jon in front of a customer, you just absolutely knock it out of the park. So
yeah, well done,
thank
Jon.
you for joining us here.
No, I'm glad you guys had me. Thank you.
Yeah,
You got
absolutely.
it. Thanks.
Yeah, and Jon, I'll see you, Saturday at midnight, right?
Yeah, we're going to do some
There you go.
Right.
There you go. Thank you, Lance.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Gabby.
everybody.
All right, take